Eskom battles to keep the lights on. SAA is cancelling flights to save cash. The embattled national carrier says it's also consolidating some flights. Well, it'll also consolidate at least some flights in the month of February. This affects local and international routes, including Johannesburg, Durban, Cape Town, and then internationally Nairobi and Washington, D.C. Earlier this week, SAA received a 3.5 billion rand government-guaranteed loan from the Development Bank of Southern Africa. The airline has not made a profit for nearly a decade and is currently under business rescue. Let's talk more about this now. Bring in SAA spokesperson Tlali Tlali joining us here on Nightline to further unpack the announcement of the past few hours. Tlali, a very good evening to you. Thank you for coming in. So the intention here is to save costs because we all know SAA cannot afford to waste any more money. How much will you save from these flight cancellations?
Look, thank you for the opportunity. We may not be in a position to immediately quantify the savings. However, there are certain things that are clear to us. We have put out a statement indicating that we are cancelling flights and we are also consolidating others. If one were to break it down and simplify it, in a situation where you were to operate 2 flights to a particular destination and you become aware at the time before you commence with your flight that you have low passenger volumes and there's an opportunity for you to put all these passengers into one aircraft, it means you'll be operating one aircraft with one set of crew and you'll be saving right across the value chain, including fuel, navigation, landing and parking fees. So those are some of the factors that we have taken into account. It is an aggressive approach which shows that we are departing from the previous practices where we would continue to do things the same way but expect different outcomes.
And I want to go to your definition of a flight that is not financially viable at a particular time. How do you make that definition?
Look, it is clear. Certain things are known to us in terms of the bookings, in terms of the numbers of passengers, in terms of the class of tickets that have been purchased. But one of the indicators would be your load factors. In other words, you wouldn't want to operate an aircraft that has a seat capacity, for example, of 100 passengers when you have 30 or 40. It becomes clear to you before you even take off that you are going to operate a loss-making flight. And at that time, you have to make an appropriate commercial decision in terms of what your options are. And where there are options that are not going to adversely impact on your passengers, you need to explore those. Hence, in this instance, we say we 1 cancel, 2 consolidate. The effect of it is that a passenger continues to fly to their final destination.
I want to go back to the issue of the savings because you said you're unable to give us a number. So at this point, what SAA is doing, you said it's an aggressive action essentially to try and save these costs. But you're basically shooting in the dark because you don't know how much you're going to save.
It is not shooting in the dark. What I'm saying to you is that I am not in a position to immediately give you figures now as quantified to say that out of this exercise, these are the numbers in terms of the savings. But it is an exercise that we can undertake and I can make that information available at a later stage.
Okay, do you know how many people will be affected?
Look, we look at the numbers per flight. The indications in terms of the information that we have put out there is that we are doing cancellation and consolidation right across our network, where we are talking about 48 round trips, which really essentially translate into 3 domestic routes, 1 international route and 5 regional routes. All of these put together, they give us certain numbers, again, which are not immediately available for one to put out for the public to know and understand. But this is a figure that can easily be worked out so that we are able to crystallize it and quantify so that it becomes clear to everybody.
And there's a lot of job uncertainty. I mean, at SAA, there was the strike of last year over the wages. There was the issue of the planned retrenchments. Those have not been cancelled but put on ice for now. What do you do with the staff that would have operated these flights after now the cancellation? What becomes of them?
Look, the status quo remains for now. Remember, the airline at the moment is in business rescue. The business rescue practitioners are on record having indicated now they are currently busy putting a plan together, which plan should be presented to the creditors for adoption by no later than the 20th of February. Once that plan has passed the necessary the approval levels, it should be ready for implementation. And based on what it entails, once approved, we will have a sense of what the future shape and form of the SAA as a business going forward will look like. And that speaks to issues that include network, the markets in which we'll operate, as well as the size of the workforce. At the moment, things will stay as they are.
Mine is more of an immediate question about what happens now. I mean, these flight cancellations, the first one I see is dated 3rd of February. This is the first cancelled flight. And then these will go all the way until when? The end of Feb, essentially. Some of them for the 27th of February. That's when the last cancelled flight will be. The staff who would have been put on shift on those aircraft during the month of February, do you redirect them to other aircraft, or what happens?
Look, if you are to contextualize the decision in terms of the impact of these cancellations, when you look at the network, the cancellations only amount to 3%. 3% of our entire schedule in terms of our operations. So that means that the bulk of our employees will continue to operate in terms of flying to various destinations. You have, in an environment of this nature, must have a certain surplus number of staff that should be able to come as a backup in the event any of the employees are not available. So it still counts positively insofar as the airlines, from a point of view of savings, is concerned, because in addition to the salaries that the crews will get on an ordinary basis, they also get allowances in the event they operate. So when you have reduced number of people who are operating flights, it means the airline is able to make savings in that regard.
So they're still going to work and they're being paid?
They are still... You and I, as employees, would get our salaries. But in the context of our crew, in addition to their salaries, that is basic, they get the allowances at the time when they operate flights.
Okay, so in terms of this issue of the cancellation of flights, it began early this year, I believe. Yes, early January we got the first announcement of the first batch. Now, end of January, you're cancelling flights for February, right? When did you realize that it would have to come to this for SAA? Was it before or after the strike of last year?
Look, when you operate in an airline environment, you do what is called route profitability assessment. You keep an eye in terms of the performance of your routes. So the issue around cancellation and consolidation is something that is not uncommon in the industry. However, the decision that caused us, one, to do it at this scale, and two, to publish it, was based on the numbers. And we are also aware, and we must admit, that what exacerbated the situation in terms of the load factors, in other words, passengers booked to fly on SAA, was a series of incidents that happened towards the end of the year last.
Because what I'm interested in is how soon you know that this is not going to be profitable. How much of a window do you have to make the determination?
Look, ordinarily from a planning perspective, there has to be a window period of 21 days within which a decision has to be made whether to operate a flight or not to do so.
Okay, so a lot was said late last year when the strike began, and we saw the likes of Flight Centre begin to say, look, we're not going to be booking any of our customers on SAA flights. When you look at these cancellations, how do you, as South African Airways, imagine these are going to impact on your reputation among people who used to fly SAA, who may now say you have become quite unreliable because they don't know if a flight cancellation announcement is going to come? Will you get the necessary funds? Is this thing going under? Why should people perceive you positively at this point?
The decision that we have taken and the announcement that we have made, which we have made timelessly so, if anything, should be seen positively, because what it does, it gives information to the market which will enable market travelers, it could be you and I who could be traveling next week, to have information at our disposal in order to consider our travel options. Beyond that, the arrangement that we have put in place is not one of saying that flights have been cancelled. We are saying we cancel and we consolidate. Beyond that, we reaccommodate. That means that we still carry the responsibility of ensuring that you are able to travel to your final destination. In this instance, we have announced now what is going to happen in the month of February. Any other passenger who's going to travel in February, they know now what it means for them, and the airline will also participate at the level of facilitating for their reaccommodation.
Very quickly, these are interim measures, right? Ultimately, SAA is going to have to make some very tough and uncomfortable long-term decisions in order to save this money. Are you guys willing to press those buttons currently?
I think we have no option. The government, as the shareholder, indicated that there's going to have to be a radical transformation of the business if it is to survive going into the future. And that is what all of us are facing when we see as a reality that is right in front of our faces. We are going to have to take such measures. There's
an article published by IOL out today. The DA's Alf Lee is saying that business rescue practitioners at SAA are looking at taking the uninsurance employment funds to pay retrenchment packages. Is that what's going on?
I am not aware of that. What I do know is that there are certain processes that are being undertaken by the business rescue practitioners. And what is critical is for them to put together a plan that must be presented to the creditors, including its implications for funding going forward.
But sitting here tonight,
once that plan has been adopted, then its implementation will be announced and all of us will know the details. Let's leave speculation.
Final question. As you sit here tonight, you cannot say, as a matter of fact, that the business rescue practitioners are not mulling at the possibility of taking unemployment insurance funds to pay retrenchment packages.
What I can tell you is that business rescue practitioners are hard at work to put together a plan that must be presented by no later than the 20th of February.
This could be in the plan, though.
The details of which will be known at that time.
But this could be in the plan. What I'm asking you is, this could be in the plan, could it not?
Speculation does not help you and I and the rest of the South.
But it's a possibility.
Let's not speculate.
All right, SAA spokesperson Tlali Tlali speaking to us on the back of that announcement today of about 27 flights being cancelled as the ailing national carrier continues with its attempts to try and save costs. Coming up